Yes, indeed. Good morning, and thank you for the warm words of welcome. And indeed, it's a nice occasion to be here back in Budapest, and the venue indeed is spectacular. So thank you for choosing such a nice location. Indeed, I just want to spend a few words maybe explaining, let's say, the development of the soil monitoring law for the EU, and specifically how the Joint Research Centre, where I work, will be involved in its implementation and support to member states. For those of you maybe who are not so familiar, the JRC is the scientific advisory body of the European Commission. So we're there to provide the scientific and technical inputs into directives and regulations, and in this case specifically focusing on the soil monitoring law, or the Soil Monitoring and Resilience Directive, as it's also known. Let me just see. Great. Just maybe a few words of context, just to maybe bring us back into the overall perspective and the fact that tomorrow is World Soil Day as well. So we should maybe have a nod to that. And I think it's worth reflecting that over the past, let's say, 4 or 5 years, there's been a tremendous change in the policy perception on soils. I used to joke that maybe 20 or 30 years ago, if you went to a dinner party and you say, "Oh, I'm a soil scientist," people would just really walk away. They wouldn't know what you were. But actually, that's changed completely now. And I think there's a real understanding of the value of soils across different policy environments. And that's driven very much by the European Green Deal, which placed soils there at its heart. And obviously that if you look towards the green transition now and the implementation of the legislation that came out of the Green Deal, it's clear that soils are really important for those. And if you look at the mission letters for the new commissioners, maybe that's not something that you do from a habit, but it's worth looking because they're both implicitly and explicitly soils are mentioned as a key topic for the next commission. And also, our President von der Leyen stressed the importance of improving the EU's natural capital to face the triple challenges of climate change, biodiversity loss, and also to support security, competitiveness, and sovereignty, as we heard in the opening speech. And then maybe just to highlight again, recently there's been a couple of high-level reports that have come out. The Ministro from the ex-Finnish Prime Minister basically stressed the importance of sustainable soil management because soil degradation was already affecting the ability of the EU in terms of food production, water management, energy generation, and so on. And it highlighted the risk from new climatic extremes and the impact that they may have also on soil functions. So to have this being stressed from a high-level report is actually also proof that that there's a real interest in soils. And we also had recently the strategic dialogue on the future of EU agriculture, and there's also a specific section on the need for sustainable soil management to reinforce agriculture moving into the next 5 years. We also heard already about the importance of a common agricultural policy. But we're aware that actually the state of soils in the EU are actually not in an optimum condition. Work that we've carried out at the GRC, but also with the scientific community, show that more than 60% of the soils of the EU have an issue in relation to soil degradation. And there's a whole range of statistics there that demonstrate that there's a broad church of issues that have to be dealt with in relation to soils. And just to make it clear, I mean, in Budapest earlier this year, you had flooding, also in Poland, Czechia, and more recently in Spain. People talked about the mud. The mud is soil erosion, and so it shows that the need for sustainable soil management, soil sealing, attenuates issues. So there really is a need for action in relation to soils. So this process is starting. The Nature Restoration Regulation was adopted in the summer. And there's a nice statement that soils are an integral part of all terrestrial ecosystems. You can't have healthy ecosystems if you don't have healthy soils. That's a sort of a key message. And the regulation has a number of obligations on member states in relation to organic soils, soils in forests, and specifically relating to the organic carbon content of mineral soils or croplands. Excuse me. And a thing to consider here is that for the first time, there's a legal definition of condition within the law. So soils should be restored until satisfactory levels are met. So now there's a discussion about what we mean by satisfactory level and how do we go about measuring that. So complementary, that's being carried out then by the discussions in relation to the Soil Monitoring and Resilience Directive, otherwise known as the Soil Monitoring Law, where there has a number of steps to better collect information on the condition of soils, to describe soil health through chemical, physical, and biological descriptors, indicators, to look at the issue of contaminated sites and how to restore those in the long term. And this is currently going through the trialogue process under the Hungarian presidency. So there's a lot of interesting discussions about the meaning of words and definitions and concepts. And hopefully, maybe by the end of the year, we have a successful conclusion to that. I hope so. Now, what do we do? I mean, the JRC has been tasked with supporting the implementation of the soil monitoring law. I'm responsible for the EU Soil Observatory. And our, let's say, target is to develop and help implement EU-wide soil monitoring systems so that we can collect data in an integrated way that then feed indicators, dashboards, so we can demonstrate the impact of policies like the Nature Restoration Regulation, for example, and others at the CAP. And then we can communicate that information to a broader stakeholder community. But also we can target gaps in our understanding and knowledge, and that's where projects like AI for Soil comes in, because they can help us develop better indicators, better way of collecting data, maybe more efficient ways of collecting data that eventually can reduce the burden on member states, which is also a very important consideration. So I'm just going to mention very quickly 4 areas where maybe just to give you a flavor of how the implementation of the soil monitoring law will take place. So first of all, I want to talk about this concept of a digital soil health data portal that's mentioned in the law. So we currently have this dashboard on soil degradation that we've developed, let's say, by taking scientific data and applying a sort of convergence of evidence approach to show where soil degradation processes are taking place. So the darker the areas there, the more evidence we have for a range of degradational processes. The green areas don't necessarily mean that they're free of degradation processes, but we lack evidence, for example. So diffuse pollution is an important gap in our understanding. But what we want to try and do now through the soil monitoring law is to replace these data with data that comes from member states, because they are the ones that will collect most of the data. They will apply a threshold that's relevant for that member state. And then it's a job of us to bring it all together in an integrated way. So let's say in 2033, we should have a new version of this that reflects what the situation of soil health is, rather than soil degradation. As I said, there are other, let's say, policy interests in relation to soil as well. So we see the portal being a collection of dashboards, maybe some of those targeting the supporting the implementation of the soil monitoring law. I'll say a bit more about that in a moment. But there could be other scopes as well. So in terms of, let's say, soil pollution or desertification dashboard to demonstrate how the EU is dealing with these issues. We also want to be able to bring in diverse data flows. And I think that's, again, another area where AI for soil health is working very importantly on in terms of data integration. So we have the soil monitoring law, we have our own Lucas soil module. We have all the, let's say, output from the various soil mission projects, Horizon Europe coming in. We have all the Copernicus data streams, and also looking at increasingly on how member states are making farm level data available through the IAC system. So a key element that we have to consider in the future will be interoperability. So we have to be able to bring all these data together in a way that it can be used and harmonized. So we can think about this portal as, you know, being able to go down into increasing levels of detail in terms of each of the individual descriptors or indicators. But also we want to be able to provide additional knowledge for the stakeholder community. So not just the monitoring data and maps that are derived from there, but also the methodologies that we use to produce the data. We need to make the data comparable. So there will be a scope to develop transfer functions to understand how data analyzed by a member state can be comparable to other member states. And also to bring in, as I said, these other additional data sets as well. And so eventually one could consider, let's say, a one-stop shop, a single point of access for all data related for soils for the European Union. And we're working on this for the next few years. Maybe just a specific example of a thematic aspect. You know, there's a lot of, let's say, increasing interest now on soil pollution. The law has a specific section dealing with contaminated sites. So with the colleagues in the Environment Agency, European Environment Agency in Copenhagen, we will look to sort of bring all these pollution data sets together under a common roof. Also to look at how we can use the monitoring data to screen for emerging pollutants, for example, so we can help member states identify where there might be areas of concerns or substances of concern where currently we don't have so much information. We will also provide information in terms of support on how to improve soil health. So there will be a toolbox for sustainable management practices, so people can go in and extract different practices and understand them. But they should be supported by some sort of analysis that indicates maybe how they may have to be used in combination. So some practices may have strengths in certain areas, but they may not be applicable in other sort of climatic environments. So there has to be a supporting guidance and information for this part. The second aspect that we do is we have to adapt the Lucas soil module. So we have Gergle here in the audience that helped drive the very first aspect of this. So this is let's say a de facto soil monitoring program that we've been running for the EU. We've carried out 4 iterations of this, increasing in the number of points, increasing it in complexity, reflecting actually an increasing policy demand for soil knowledge. At the beginning, we collected, let's say, classic pedological data, but now we're moving to eDNA, looking at pesticide residues, and eventually, you know, some emerging concern pollutants such as PFAS and so on. So at the moment, we collect 2 types of samples, which we then analyze for different characteristics, chemical, physical parameters, metals, DNA, pesticide residues. and potentially in the future also pollution. We have to see at the end what comes out of the final law, because there's still some discussion about what descriptors are included in the annex of the law. But the idea then is that we would adapt, let's say, the Lucas sampling to reflect and to mirror what is being requested in the law. And therefore, we would need the new, let's say, sampling instructions, maybe new tools, new training materials, and so on to support member states. The third element that we will be doing will be to upgrade a European soil data center. So this has been running for more than 10 years now, where we have a range of data sets at a European level, predominantly at a European level, describing soil health, soil condition. And now we have to sort of adapt this in a way that it can accommodate the data flows from the reporting by member states carried out under the soil law, but also under other relevant directives as well. We also want to develop more of a knowledge management platform. So we see the soil observatory concept as a sort of a knowledge access. If you want to be able to get policy information or to have land management information, you would go to the USO interface. But if you wanted the data, you have to go to the SDAC. So we will see how to physically implement that. And as I said, also a key partner for us would be the European Environment Agency, because they have responsibility at the moment for contaminated sites, for soil sealing through the Copernicus program. We want to be able to bring all these together, as I said, in a common platform, a common format. We also have one eye on the enlargement process. So how do we support the implementation of the law in candidate countries? And there's also a new focus on the Mediterranean as well. So we have to sort of think about a broader geographic scope. And I don't want to sort of to scare you with this, but these are some of the, let's say, the initial sort of data flows that we're having to consider as part of the, let's say, the reporting requirements that are placed by member states. We are trying to find a way that member states simply provide one set of data, probably to the Environment Agency under the report net mechanism, but then they come to us under the portal to have a European perspective and all the additional analysis and assessment tools for that. I'm sure that some of you, surely that some of you are also engaging with a sister project, Soilwise. So they are tasked with supporting, let's say, a data and knowledge infrastructure development for us, which we will extend the functionality into to support also the soil monitoring law data sets as well, and also other elements that are being created by the soil mission. And then finally, a very important aspect that we are tasked with is to provide practical support to member states. The law has a number of obligations on the Commission to support member states in the implementation of the law. And in our case, we are tasked with developing guidelines to support member states. So for each specific aspect of the law, there will be a document to help member states develop and implement and put together necessary mechanisms for the law to be successful. And with that, thank you very much.